Hello, friends, and welcome back to the Mint etc. podcast. As usual, I have an excited Shouvik Das as my co-host, and I guess by now you all would have sort of uh, guessed this that as 2025 draws to a close. Probably most of us would agree that AI undoubtedly has dominated conversations. On the one hand, you have its potentials, the maturation of India's tech ecosystem, of course, coupled with fears of job losses, and of course, concerns over an AI bubble due to irrational exuberance, as I would call it. And I can see Shavik nodding his head. So AI, of course, is no longer a niche technology. Uh, it has moved, from classical AI, where traditional or classical AI would just analyze historical data, detect patterns, make predictions. Then you had GenAI, which changed the entire game, made it entirely transformative by producing original content, whether it is text, code, images, audio, video, and all that you needed is put simple prompts in natural languages, whether it's English, Hindi, or Spanish, or whichever language you can think of. Maybe Swahili. I'm not sure whether we have anything in Swahili, but I'm just saying. And 3 years ago, we had the launch of ChatGPT. I think, Shavik, if I'm right, it was 200 million in the first 2 months itself, I think so. Or 100 million in the first 2 months, I think so. But
Yeah, I think it was the fastest to 100 million users.
yeah, absolutely. I think in the
Fastest
first
ever.
months. Yeah.
Yeah.
And now, today, OpenAI claims that it has more than 1 million ChatGPT users. And interestingly, Sensor Tower estimates that GenAI apps could generate over $10 billion in revenue by 2026. And if that's not enough, of course, we have agentic AI, which is considered to be, so Gen AI is taking this leap towards agentic AI, where these systems go beyond content generation. They are going to reason, plan, take autonomous actions on the user's behalf, and this sort of gives us a semblance or the feeling that it is nudging closer to general intelligence, where AI would sort of not only uh, excel human not only emulate human actions but also excel human intelligence. And of course there are those associated concerns whether AI models will take over our lives, robots, AI powered robots will take over our lives, etc., which we'll be talking about in a bit. But interestingly, what we need to also balance it out is this whole thing of the kind of expectation whether Gen AI and agentic AI are delivering returns for the enterprise. That's of course one question that people are asking. Whether the investments that have gone into all these companies, what is known as a circular funding, where all the tech companies are funding each other, whether that's going to create an AI bubble, and more importantly, that AI agents can write, deploy, and debug code at speed, but they also hallucinate, overlook basic errors, and at times disrupt the very systems they are designed to improve. Now, we have sort of, I think this sort of encapsulates what has happened during 2025. So clearly this move is, classical AI to Gen AI to agentic AI, as I sort of just wrapped it up. Are we on the same page?
Yeah, I think absolutely, Leslie. First of all, I think that was a wonderful recap of 2025. And that also kind of goes on to show that 2025 was featured AI in, I think, pretty much every conversation from retail to literally everything to people generating, creating memes for fun. Apple this year launched a feature where you could create your own emojis and try and personalize conversations. So even there's AI there when you're trying to make fun of your friends. So a bit of an interesting stat to back up what you mentioned, Leslie. Accenture and TCS, which are the world's two largest tech services companies, they disclosed AI revenues in the last quarters. TCS disclosed revenue of close to $1.5 billion. Accenture has been disclosing Gen AI revenue for a while. They mentioned that from September to November they earned 1.2 billion or 1.1 billion,
But have,
just out of GenAI projects.
okay. So these are Gen AI projects for clients.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's significant because until now we were talking about, Gen AI is still at an early stage. We don't know if businesses will find value. Let's see where it goes. There are copyright concerns and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
But 2025 seems to be the year when companies are realizing that, let's just start using it because there are clearly gains and benefits to be had from the technology. So it's clearly no longer just a buzzword. It's no longer just hype. And I think we are on the same page that it is one of the most substantial technologies to come out in the maybe in the past decade or so.
But of course, we are not, I mean, for the benefit of our viewers and listeners, we are not dismissing the fact that, Gartner has already said that okay, 70% of the agentic AI projects will sort of fail, or Gen AI. And
Right,
he also, that report, which created quite a stir, basically said that, 90 or 95% of the projects are not taking off the ground. But I think more important is to understand the spirit of these surveys, that if not rightly implemented, because I think mostly what happens is, enterprises especially, see, it's largely consumer driven, so consumers are clearly very excited about this, because you can play around with these tools, like
right.
when we were talking about AI, we were talking about, look at how people went bananas over the nano banana, look how people went
Yeah,
crazy over the ghibli kind of stuff. Now that's okay, if you and I keep on doing it as individuals. As enterprises, you have
right,
legacy systems to deal with. These legacy systems have to sort of be integrated. All these newer models have to be integrated with the legacy systems, especially when it comes to agentic AI, which is dealing with hundreds of AI, APIs, which are application programming
right,
interfaces, or simply put, software that helps these other tools communicate with each other. Now that is where
right,
the issue is. So we're not dismissing that fact. So as Shavik rightly said, Gen AI is sort of showing, I wouldn't say return on investment in the strict sense of the word of money flowing in, but it clearly is becoming an imperative for most system, because I'm not sure whether any company today can survive without implementing these things. So it could start with simple basic tools, like, okay, whether writing a marketing campaign where it eases you, but at the same time, I think
right,
more important is the human plus machine collaboration, the human plus AI collaboration, so that there are
right.
guardrails built around it. There are those kind of checks and balances. Giving too much power to AI probably may not be a very sensible thing, and which is
Of
everybody is
course.
urging this, and which also brings us from a trend point of view to your favorite topic and my favorite topic, which is the India growth story, which we'll talk about as we conclude the series for 2025. So let's
Right,
sort of to recapitulate, and the AI space, when we are talking, regardless, see, I think for it's important for our viewers and listeners to understand that AI is not a single technology, it is a concept. So if I were to, I want to say something that I said at the beginning of the year, ki AI is the desire of humans to make machines as intelligent as themselves, if not more intelligent. If we understand that
right,
concept, then there are a suite of technologies, whether that is machine
right,
learning, whether that is deep learning, whether that is image recognition, whether that is natural language processing, whether that is computer vision, or whether that is Gen AI, whether agentic AI. These are all basically
right,
technologies that enable these kind of processes. If that concept is clear, then it's easier, to work around many of our misconceptions about AI. But I think more importantly, not so much from a individual point of view, because individuals can play around with Sora, get excited, create a whale riding a cycle,
right,
which is so. But in enterprises, of course, if you say I know you must be inundated with these hundreds and thousands of press releases saying I'm an AI powered company. I said, AI powered for what? What do you mean by AI powered?
right,
What is the problem you're trying to solve? Tell us that. What's so
right. And I think
how frustrated or excited are you with all these things?
recently when Microsoft's chairman Satya Nadella came to India, his first keynote was all about explaining to people what Microsoft's really doing. So he broke it down into 5 points, and he spoke about how they're investing in the foundational models and as well as data sets, and trying to sort of clarify and filter down these things for people. And I think that's really important because, as you rightly mentioned, Leslie, so many companies claiming to be at the forefront of AI innovation. I think it's important for companies to realize that not everyone, and I think many innovators, researchers, scientists have spoken about this, that it's not important for every company to reinvent the wheel. It's not necessary that every startup must work on trying to create a GPT or a Gemini or a Claude. It's impossible. In fact, it requires massive amounts of capital, and it's not required, in fact. And I think slowly 2025, I think, became the year when more and more companies started realizing that foundational innovation is not something that is mandatory at every level. And I think more and more companies have also realized that the true benefit lies in trying to integrate AI with local context. So more expertise in local languages, more expertise in specific domains. There are now we saw the rise in 2025 of companies which are trying to squarely target healthcare as a sector and trying to sell AI products as companions for doctors with local data sets. We've seen AI in legal services, AI in law and law firms come up as a very serious area. So I think this year kind of became that year when companies started trying to get more maturity in AI instead of once again just using it as a buzzword. And I think that's progress made, and progress made with good intent, in fact.
Absolutely, I fully agree because clearly there are certain sectors that lend themselves very easy to digital technologies and to AI, primarily
Right.
being the BFSI sector, which is the banking, financial services, and
Absolutely.
insurance, followed by retail, e-commerce, and all these other sectors. Then of course healthcare because you use it for imaging, for the, uh, I mean, you have a lot of radiologists being used, being assisted with
Right.
AI imaging processes being used for tuberculosis, etc. For identifying
Right.
things. So because, and it's a combination of deep learning and Gen AI. It's not everything is not Gen AI. Please understand that a lot of
That's correct.
hardcore machine learning and deep learning that is there, which is still the classical and traditional AI part of it. So there's tremendous value.
Right.
It's not that it's one pitted against the other, which people have this illusion that everything is going autonomous and similar. No, it doesn't work that way. Even a
Right.
Bayesian statistical tool will probably give you better results in certain areas, and that's also rudimentary AI. So let's be clear about these
Right.
things. And till people are using RPA, robotic process automation, they're using AI powered. Now they call it AI powered RPA. No, there's no need for all those kind of confusion
Right.
creating things. Let's understand simple, as I think even Shavik and I have spoken about this earlier also. Let's talk about what is the problem you want to solve and which tool do you
Right.
want to use, which is the tool best suited to solving that problem, period. As simple as that.
Right. Right.
Just because you have a hammer
Absolutely.
for seeking a nail everywhere, it's not doesn't work that way. So that's the interesting part of it. But Shavik, I think
Right.
inadvertently or very knowingly, you've touched on the India story already. Okay, we have spoken about
Right.
this
Of course.
time and again. I think so. I think last year, I remember. I mean, we have already I think it was this month, beginning of this month, that UNDP came up with this report that India can take the lead as far as AI inclusivity is concerned. Now, that's a very
Right.
important thing because in the digital space, we have already done that with UPI and all those other things. Aadhaar is a
Right.
classic example. Not everybody agrees because they talk about the privacy part of it. But yes, if one were to not, talk about the privacy part of it as far as Aadhaar is concerned, as far as account aggregate is concerned, the whole India stack that we're talking about, whether it is for health,
Right.
whether it is for payments, whether it is for other kind of thing that's being extended to other areas also. That's a very interesting area, and much of it, the DPI framework, is being applied to the AI part of it, which we have written about even earlier. You have been
Right.
speaking a lot to the ministries. You have been hearing the plenty of announcements by Ashwini Vaishnav, Minister of IT, and it's pretty, I think it's a very sanguine approach where we have spoken about the techno legal framework, where India does not want to stifle innovation and at the same time wants to put sufficient guardrails around AI, which I think is a very sensible approach as opposed to what the EU and was doing initially. Of course, even the EU, European Union, has sort of diluted some of the because they realize that the stance that countries like India is taking is much more suited to not stifling innovation and encouraging AI with sufficient guardrails. Easier said than done, mind you, but it's a good start.
Right.
Tell us, I would love you to tell our viewers and listeners about the India story, right? We have now 10 semiconductor plants, some 12 LLMs, some of them voice LLMs. If you can just quickly, recapitulate.
Right. And just before recapping, Leslie, I just want to add that in February 2026, I think for a 5-day AI Impact Summit being hosted by
Yeah,
by India, where we've invited pretty much all the countries that are necessary and relevant in the global AI conversation. So the right conversations are being held. And as far as AI is concerned, India is trying to find its own direction. This year, of course, we saw the IT ministry come out with the AI rules, AI content labeling rules in an effort to take on deepfakes. Um, the Competition Commission is very active on trying to understand AI. I was in fact a part of a conversation which also featured the CCI chairperson Ravneet Kaur, who happened to mention that the idea of regulation is not to come in before innovation, but let innovation take its course and let innovation follow the laws of the land. And they had a clear point that copyright is not something that requires a different entire regulatory framework just because AI is different. The existing copyright laws work just fine. So India is taking that approach. We have
and
the AI governance
just
framework now.
just to interject out here is that basically it resonates with the Niti Aayog papers. So the Niti Aayog, the CCI
Yes,
paper, and the India AI mission statements are all very similar because, of course, they draw on the same base.
right. And exactly. And the AI governance framework that the IT ministry put out
Yes,
last month, it also clearly spoke about the government's at least a vision from the standing committee to try and not take a heavy-handed regulatory approach, and that I think does keeping all the criticisms and everything aside, I think that does help give a direction to the industry that if you want to pursue innovation, at least that's the messaging from the government, that if you want to pursue innovation, we as a country will try to support you by letting you use our open source Indic language data sets. Or we'd want companies to come here and invest in data centers. We've seen that extensively, in fact, this year. Google with 15 billion, Microsoft 17 and a half.
Amazon.
Of course, there are people who mentioned that, it's not like this much money was spent in 2025, but of course, in 5 years span, this is the kind of investment coming in. And in fact, Gartner
I
sort
think
of had a revision.
but just to interject again here is that the investments have to be seen in the context of the geopolitics that's going on at this point in time.
Absolutely.
Despite the fact that there is a
Absolutely.
lot of turmoil in the US India relationships, people are unclear about it. Yet we have these investments, which sends out a clear signal that India is a place to look out for as far as AI is concerned. Because we remember we have over
Definitely.
1,000 GCCs, which are global capability
Right.
centers of tech multinationals out here. And we also, you spoke about the India data sets, which is a very important point because for localization of AI models, that's extremely important. We have more than
Right.
3,000 unique data sets in India as part of the AI Kosha or AI Kosha repository.
Right. Absolutely. And in fact, Leslie, the American companies are investing at scale. Earlier this year, in fact, last year, technically, Google built Indic GenBench, which is the Indic language benchmark, which actually ranks the veracity of AI models in 29 Indian languages,
Microsoft
which
has a
goes
similar one.
beyond the 22 official ones.
Microsoft has a similar
So,
benchmark.
exactly, and OpenAI launched this year in
Yes.
QA similar stuff for 12 Indian languages, and so you're seeing this sort of a momentum coming from the global tech companies, and I think now it's down to our startups and our entrepreneurs and our engineers to see what they can do with this opportunity. We've seen startups being giving promising pitches. We hear that Sarvam's gonna make a big announcement at the India AI Summit.
I think it's a voice
And
ML taken.
I would imagine so. In fact, Gyani itself, Ganesh's company Gyani.ai, they've been funded by the IT Ministry's India AI mission, and they're building a voice only
Yes.
foundational model, trying to build that from scale for Indic languages. So there is momentum, and there is clearly that push to kind of take the India story ahead in terms of not just being a services country, not just being a back office, but a country which is working on not the English language models, but the alternate languages, which I think are pretty much the dominant base for countries like India, where only just about 9 to 10% people speak English. So I think it's been a good
Most
year,
people
and
can't read and write, yeah. So it's extremely important to have
right,
voice
absolutely.
LLMs.
Absolutely. In fact, I had this conversation recently in one such forum where people mentioned that, as far as smartphones are concerned, you'd need a smartphone to use AI, and I wonder if the bottom 500 million of India's entire economic division would really ever come around to using AI. But there is slowly that understanding that AI does not need to manifest through a smartphone screen. It could be through an on-call IVR if you're reaching out to a public services helpline. So different formats being
But that is a
experimented with
very
it.
important point, the last point that you mentioned, because from an inclusivity point of view, if somebody cannot
Absolutely.
afford a smartphone, either you get the smartphone price to around even 2000 and 3000. I think people don't realize this, and in a country like India, even a 2000 worth, even if a phone costs 2000, it's means a lot. It's pretty
Right.
expensive for people for almost like 70 to 70% of our population. We just don't, it
Right.
doesn't sink in very easily. So if you have the kind of 500 rupee phones, or so where they can at least manage it somehow, which they're doing it. And I think that is what the government is also trying to enable at that level.
Right, absolutely. And I think that's where the journey lies. I think, in fact, Manish Gupta, is the director of Google DeepMind India, he made this point that, at the last mile, the job that AI should do is to ease the life of a farmer who wants to know
Yes.
if there are weather predictions that he should get, and that should be enabled through an IVR or through a platform that does not require a smartphone, because a farmer's never going to buy a smartphone. For him, the smartphone screen is brittle. It's going to break in a month, and he can't afford to buy a phone every month. So I think that the right conversations have begun this year,
Correct.
and it'll be interesting to see how implementation happens at scale in 2026. That's what I'm hoping to see. You would, of course, have a close view on that as well, Leslie.
Yeah, I mean, because for me also, as far as the grand plan of India is concerned, I'm pretty convinced that we are in the right. Maybe a little. I mean, some may argue that it's a little late in the game, but I don't, because this late in the game is a kind of a meaningless phrase for me, for the simple reason that it took hundreds of years for a country like America to become what it is today. Okay, China also
Right.
has been, but China has a different kind of government. We are the democratic. I mean, regardless of how you define democracy. But at the same time, at this point in time, we clearly have a federal structure where even the states are involved. So it's not easy. It's easier said than done when we talk about implementing certain policies. It's it's like I always tell people, when you're watching cricket, you always tell, oh, Kohli should have played better, or Rahul should have played better, or whoever it be, whatever name you want. Hardik Pandya should have bowled better. He should have done an in swinger or an out swinger or whatever it be. This pitch doesn't match. That doesn't, when you're there on that pitch, and when you're struggling with
Right.
other conditions, the condition. I'm not saying you're the best judge of things, but you have to work within the constraints, without
Absolutely.
defending any policies of the government, because that's not our job. And but we understand how complex. I'm just trying to weigh in on the complexity of these issues. They're not simple things that, okay,
Right.
you get a policy today, it's done. No, there's a lot of consultation that goes on, because we are not China. We
Right.
can just put a policy and say, okay, from tomorrow implement it. It doesn't work that way. So
Right.
India is a work in progress. It will take some time, but other than the grand plan of setting up, 10, or rather setting up at this point in time, 10 semiconductor plants, getting GPUs at subsidized rates, talking about the 12 LLMs, right, that are sanctioned by the government as of this point in time, and we are talking
Right.
100 LLMs within a couple of years, which I guess is a possibility. I don't rule it out. Having voice LLMs being set up. These are kind of extremely important steps in the right direction. But more important is what, Shavik, you pointed out, and what I have also been saying over a period of time, that unless we touch the lives of farmers, unless we touch the lives of
Absolutely.
the last mile connectivity, when it comes to human beings, 70% of our
Right.
population lives in areas that are non-metros, that are in smaller cities,
Right.
in villages. Can we touch their life? Can we make AI meaningful for them? Can we? And it's not important, this is not about AI. It is about using the right
Right.
tool for the right job. Again, I'm coming back to
Right.
the same thing every time.
That's exactly the
Yeah.
point.
What is the point of saying, if I go and tell a farmer in the village and say, okay, we have made great strides in agentic AI, the person say, huh? I'm growing food. Tell me how it's going
Right.
to help me. Is it going to improve my yield? Is it going to improve the quality of the food grains? Am I going to see some tangible return? Is it going to give me enough food on my plate? Is it going to enhance the quality of my?
Right.
This, these are the questions that are extremely important in today's times.
And I think, Leslie, you're absolutely right on that because I think there was um, this idea that, in fact, in one of the recent policy forums, this was said that AI will become a success the day you don't have to refer to AI as AI. It just becomes something that's a part of your life, similar to how UPI happened.
Just
You don't think
just
of
a day.
digital payments as, oh, data centers and frameworks and QRs and encryption and so on. You don't really talk about these keywords when you're making a UPI payment. You buy like a 10 rupee packet of milk and you ask the guy. In fact, there have been times, even with me, when you've offered, a note in cash and they've said, I don't have change, just do a UPI transfer. Um, I think what we're kind of trying to look for is AI's UPI moment in a way, um, where we try and filter the technology down at the last mile to such an extent that it actually benefits um, the government school in a tier 5 village where there is one teacher for 250 students. And the teacher wouldn't have to look at AI as oh, this is an AI tool that I'm using. And instead, it becomes sort of like a part of the entire
Exactly. You
experience and
used a chalk and a board
practice.
earlier. Now you're just using an AI tool. It's okay. Just the screens
Right.
between the formats have changed. But on
Right.
that
And
note,
I guess there's a reason why there is some skepticism on that note because at the last mile, what we hear sitting in metros versus what is actually happening is, of course, there's a gap. Microsoft mentioned skilling 20 million people. That's 2 crore people in AI. And I think somebody mentioned that, 2 crore is a massive number. And while that's true, I mean, but you're kind of tempted to believe that, it's not.
No,
Absolutely
it's a
impossible.
massive number, but not as far as when you compare 20 million to 1.4 billion population. So that is the
Right.
problem. So when you realize
Absolutely.
the mismatch is so great, then that is the point where the
Right.
skepticism concerned. But regardless of the skepticism, one has to understand that AI is still a very urban story. Let's be clear about it.
Absolutely.
It's a metro story.
Absolutely.
It's a village. When the moment you get it down to the villages, which is what we are talking, and which UNDP talks about, which every sensible policymaker, even the government for that matter of fact, talks about.
Right.
And
Right.
hopefully, we need to sort of temper the expectation and say, let us help the last mile. It's a utopian idea at this point in time, but every
Right.
good stuff has come out from a utopian idea, and somebody has to try it. We have to keep on.
Right. In fact, the India stack was born out of
Absolutely.
one such utopian idea, so
And
to speak.
not everybody will agree. There will always be this question: are you sort of compromising with my privacy? And but these are more urban questions, and I'm not dismissing those. They're
Yes,
extremely
absolutely.
important questions. But remember, a person who does not have two square meals on his table will not talk about privacy at that point in time. It's hard for them to think about
Yes,
those
definitely.
philosophical questions and the deeper questions, which become more meaningful once you have enough on your plate. But we'll reserve that because those are philosophical arguments and not
Right.
beyond the scope of mint, etc. But let
At
me
least not in a 30-minute episode. We need
absolutely not
a
in a 30
2 hour
minute
episode for
episode.
that.
We'll call an external expert to debate on this at this point in time.
Yes.
But before we wind up this podcast, I would love you to weigh in on certain variables. Let's call them the AI powered variables that you were sort of.
Yes, of course.
Yeah, of course, we have to call it a AI powered variable. Whether it's a Meta Ray-Ban glasses or whether it's some XR, the kind of stuff that has fascinated you and which you feel not recommend to the user. I think they have enough intelligence to buy their own gadgets, but something that has sort of excited you, whether it's a what is
I
that,
think
the trifold smartphones or whatever they.
Leslie, what I found interesting are the sort of incremental features, and I recently wrote about it as well on Mint. Um, Around the sleep analysis and tracking on a smartwatch. Um, Previously we used to see a very set way where if you go to sleep beyond 12 o'clock, the watch will say you haven't gotten enough sleep. Then that's it. But of late, sleep tracking features and sleep scores and sleep analysis has evolved in a way where a watch takes into account that, okay, your cycle is such that you might wake up, you might go to sleep at 2 in the morning, but you do wake up at like 9 in the morning, so you are getting sufficient sleep. So it takes into account that cycle and starts to analyze how such features really work. And I think wearables have started trying to use AI to develop or improve these kind of features which can actually support your everyday livelihood or everyday practices, be it sleep, be it tracking your breathing patterns. And these are features we don't think about. We're not thinking about our breathing patterns every day. But you increasingly see people getting an alert that your resting heart rate, this conversation, in fact, resting heart rate is a term which came up in front of me from even non-tech savvy people way more often this year than previous times when people said, oh, my watch keeps telling me that my resting heart rate is increasing. And they went and got a checkup done and turned out that they had a pulmonary issue. So I think that's what AI has been doing. And I think um, sensibly enough, this is a year which didn't make a lot of noise around, XR headsets ready to change the world. We didn't see any Apple Vision headset. The Meta Quest, of course, is going steady. The Meta Ray-Ban glasses, they're also very focused on social interactions and the way you kind of meet people. Um, so we're seeing a sense of consolidation in a way where smartwatches are trying to become variables that are actually useful instead of just being a digital watch. And I think that's a very interesting thing to happen.
Yeah, I'm finding it a little funny because you first AI creates enough distractions with all these glasses and all the stuff, and they says, "Please don't lose
Yes.
sleep over me."
Yeah. And you wear an AI glass and then it says to reduce distraction,
Yeah,
turn on focus mode,
don't lose sleep.
which is
I've got
very
something for
funny.
that also. For first, it will create the distraction, and then it will address the distraction. Anyway, but that's as
Yes.
I said. I always taken a philosophical look at these things. Maybe because of my background,
Right.
I think it's important, for every user to. Always say, caveat emptor or buyer beware. Understand that there's nothing called a free lunch. Everything comes loaded with its
Yes.
own set of advantages and disadvantages. You have to see whether the benefits outweigh the
Right.
disadvantages. As simple as that.
Absolutely.
But folks,
Absolutely.
I think Shavik and I have given you a basic idea of whatever you show. Have your own wish list in the coming episode, which is going to be next year. That's going to be 2026. We'll be talking a
Yes.
lot more about the other technologies, which is not just AI. We're going to talk about quantum. We're going to talk about robotics. We're going to talk about who knows something else on the anvil or something, if there's something. And we hope to get a lot more experts on this podcast to share
Absolutely.
their own insights and to learn from them. And also, if you all have your own questions and wish list, please let us know. More than happy to receive feedback from you and act on it, more importantly. And yes, you all have already celebrated Christmas by now, by the time this podcast. So, wish you a lovely, peaceful, joyful, prosperous New Year.
Yes. Same here. Wish you the happiest year ahead and the most successful year ahead. And we'll catch you on the other side in 2026.